Hi, everybody. Welcome to our May Lunch and Learn. It is 11:59, so we will get started in just 1 minute. Okay, I have us at 12 o'clock even. Welcome to our May Lunch and Learn. Today we're joined by Foster Youth College Success Initiative. Just a couple of reminders. This will be recorded. So if you've signed up, you will receive the recording and all of the handouts and PowerPoint from today. That'll go out within about a week. And this will also show up on the Navigator's YouTube. Also a reminder that everybody's muted. So if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat, and Sarah and or I will address them at the end of the presentation. Again, welcome to our Lunch and Learn series. This is done on the third Thursday-ish of the month, from 12 to 12:30. We had to move a couple of them around just for holidays and school calendars. So our next session will be June 12th at 12 p.m. And injury-free kids for summer activity injury prevention. So keep an eye out. It will go out in our tidbits, and information on how to sign up for that Lunch and Learn will be on the Navigator's homepage within the next couple of days. Again, my name is Rae Glaser. I'm the director of the New York State Kinship Navigator program. For those of you that are not familiar with our program, we are information, referral, and education for kinship caregivers, prospective kinship caregivers, and professionals all across New York State. We run a warm line Monday through Friday, 10 to 4, 877-454-6463. We also have a website, www.nysnavigator.org, where you can go and find information on county resources that are available to you and your clients. Information on common kinship caregiver issues, such as legal designations, permanency, financial education, school enrollment, accessing official documents. Right now we have over 100 cited legal fact sheets on our website. We have interactive videos. All these lunch and learns are available on our website, but we also have videos on how to fill out an application for financial assistance, different kinship care legal arrangements, KinGAP, anything that you might be interested in. We also have access to our kinship specialist via email right on our website, or also online chat Monday through Friday, 10 to 4. We provide services in hundreds of different languages through our interpreter services, and provide access for caregivers to be able to work with local kinship support services and permanency resource centers. The last thing about the Navigator that I'll mention is we chair the statewide KinCare Coalition, which has been really important during this past year's uncertain budget season. I'm very happy to announce, for those that don't know, that all the kinship care support services were refunded this year in the governor's budget, which is excellent. If you're interested in policy work or interested in being part of our coalition, now that we have turned to our more program-centered pursuits for the rest of this year, feel free to contact me directly, or you can contact the Navigator, and we will make sure that you are on our listserv for the coalition. All right, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sara Duprey to talk about this month's topic, and that is what is the Foster Youth College Success Initiative? Over to you, Sara. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rae. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the webinar this afternoon. As Rae mentioned, my name is Sara Duprey, and I work for the New York State Education Department. My official title is Associate in Higher Education Opportunity. But what does that really mean? That means that I am the program officer for a couple of different higher education grants. And this is one of them, the Foster Youth College Success Initiative. So I have just about a half a dozen slides that I'm going to present to you, and we should have time at the end for questions, as Rae mentioned. So my goal is just to present you with an overview, and to get the word out about this grant program. It's a constant struggle to make sure that the word is out and that people and that youths know that they might be eligible for this funding. So we'll talk about what it is, and then at the end we'll have Q&A. Okay. So what is the Foster Youth College Success Initiative? It's an annual grant that happens every year. It's non-competitive and it's appropriated by the New York State Legislature. And as we know, the budget just passed, thankfully, yay. In other words, this grant program is not federally funded. There has been a lot of uncertainty at the federal level in higher education, but this grant, thankfully, is state funded. Um, Annual means, as you know, it's going to start up every single year. It's a single year project cycle. Unlike some other state funded grants that might run for 5 years at a time, this one starts up and finishes every single year. And it's non-competitive. So that means that any college that has eligible students will be funded. There isn't a rigorous RFP process. There's no competitive bid for funding. Literally every college that has eligible students will receive some funding to then pass over to support those students. So as you can see in the second bullet, this grant provides financial support, usually in the form of direct aid, to eligible undergraduate students to help them meet their cost of attendance at any CUNY school, any SUNY school, or any number of about 3 or 4 dozen private New York State schools that host a HEOP, a Higher Education Opportunity Program. So there are a couple of important words in this bullet point. First of all, it's only for undergraduate students. As you can see there, so a student who is pursuing his or her or their first associate degree or bachelor's degree can be eligible for this funding. It's not applicable toward master's degrees or doctoral degrees. And all of the SUNY and CUNY colleges do participate in the grant. And like I said, there are about 45, I think, 45 different private colleges and universities across the state that also participate. And I'll provide a little bit more detail about that point in just a minute. To continue with the overview, this is a big question, obviously a very popular question. How much funding is available? The amount of grant funding that can go to each eligible student via their college depends on a couple of things. It's actually a very straightforward formula. The first factor that we have to consider in our calculations is how much money did the New York State Legislature allocate for the grant this year? Over the past few years, it's been about $8 million per year. And just recently, we learned that it's in that same ballpark again for the 2025-26 budget year. The allocation, I believe, is 8.403 million, to be precise. And the second factor that goes into those calculations is how many students are actually eligible for. So in other words, how many students across the state have had foster care experience, KinGAP experience, or who have been orphaned. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about eligibility in just a second. Another big question that comes up is how do students actually receive funding for this grant? So the way it works, my office administers the grant. It comes through the New York State Education Department. And so every fall, we work with SUNY and CUNY and those private institutions that participate. And we compile a list of all of the eligible students across the state. And we actually collaborate with the Office of Children and Family Services on that task, OCFS. They are actually typically the agency that verifies students' eligibility. So my agency and that agency are in close communication to determine that roster of eligible students each year and figure out where those students are attending college. As you can imagine, that's kind of a fluid process. It takes lots and lots of emails and phone calls back and forth. But we do our very best to kind of nail down an accurate number to make sure that no student falls through the cracks and that everybody who's eligible can receive some funding. On each campus so I send a pool of money to each campus or to SUNY and CUNY. And then on each campus, the financial aid team divides up that pool of money across their eligible students. And those exact student level determinations are made by the financial aid team on each campus according to each individual student's need. So I don't have access to, students' individual FAFSA data or what their financial aid package or what their financial need looks like, but rather that's the job of the financial aid folks on each campus. So I can tell you that typically we allot about between $6,000 and $7,000 per student per year to each college, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every eligible student will receive that amount of money. Again, it depends on what their other funding sources are and what their financial need really is at the end of the day. Okay, here's the big question. Who is eligible to receive this grant funding? We have actually, this is such a big question. We have a whole FAQ document to talk about eligibility. I shared that document with Rae, and I believe she will be sharing that with our audience today. That document is updated about every year. And again, it's the Office of Children and Family Services that typically makes those determinations. So in order to find out if a student is eligible, they have to do item number 2 here. The student or the guardian, if the student is under 18, will complete a student consent form. That form has also been shared with Rae. So hopefully you all can get a copy of it. And that form goes directly to OCFS. It doesn't come to my office because I don't make those eligibility determinations, but rather it gets emailed straight to OCFS, and then OCFS will determine whether that particular student is eligible and communicate that determination back to me so I can make sure that those students are on the roster to get funded for the upcoming year. If you do have questions about eligibility, um, you would definitely want to contact the Foster Youth College Success Initiative team at OCFS. So I will handle general questions, and I work very closely with the private institutions and with SUNY and CUNY. But when it comes to student level questions about whether a student is eligible, you would definitely want to talk with OCFS, and I've provided their email at the bottom of this slide. So speaking of documents. There are 3 different documents that I shared with Rae. One is just a general brochure about the Foster Youth College Success Initiative. One is that FAQ about eligibility. There are always lots of questions about that. And the third one is that student consent form. That's the magic piece of the puzzle that students or their guardians have to fill out and send to OCFS to get that eligibility determination. In general, I can tell you that students who were in foster care or in a KinGAP agreement or who were orphaned at the age of 13 at or after the age of 13 would be eligible for this funding to help them meet their cost of attendance for college. I also have contact information here. So if you have any questions at all about which colleges participate or what your next steps are, or any kind of general questions about the grant, email me. I check my email almost obsessively, I would say. My email address is fosteryouth@nysed.gov. Again, my name is Sara Duprey. I'm the program officer for this grant opportunity. And if you have questions specifically about student eligibility, you would contact my colleagues over in the Office of Children and Family Services, and their email address is there for you as well. That is my very quick overview of the Foster Youth College Success Initiative. And I am happy to answer any questions that you might have about it. Rae, let me know if questions are in the chat or if folks have their hand up.
Sure will. Sarah, thank you so much.
Sure.
Number one request that we get is for financial assistance. And we've got the information that we give out about grants, about summer camps. We do get a lot of questions about guardians and custodians enrolling kids into college. That's something that, we do struggle with because there's not a lot of financial assistance out there.
Absolutely. And that's actually why this grant was initiated. We are about to enter our 10th year of
Okay.
the FYCSI grant, and it was enacted because we didn't want students to fall through the cracks who had experienced foster care or a KinGAP agreement or orphancy. When students go off to college, finances are a huge concern.
Yeah.
So knowing that this funding is available and it will follow them from year to year, that's another important point, that students don't have to fill out that consent form to be determined eligible year after year. That should be a one-time form. So once a student is determined to be eligible for it, they can receive that funding through a participating college for their entire bachelor's degree. The other really nice thing about it is that there's no age limit. With some other types of funding for specifically for foster youth, there are age limits. For example, you can't access that funding if the student is over 26 years old.
Okay.
That kind of restriction doesn't exist for this grant, and nor is there a minimum GPA requirement. It's very, very flexible. So as long as the student is enrolled at a participating college and they're in their first associate or bachelor's degree, they can access this funding to help them meet their cost of attendance. It's basically to help fill in the gaps, so that finances are one less thing to worry about, so that finances aren't the reason why a student might not persist and be retained and get to graduation.
Sure. We actually do have a number of questions that have
Oh,
come
good.
in.
All
So I
righty.
will read them off one by one.
Okay.
Um,
I
uh,
shall do my
question,
best.
okay, question number one, is there a limit to how long a youth has been out of care to be eligible? For example, a youth who may have aged out several years ago that now wants to attend college and university.
Great, great, great question. No, there is no time limit or age limit. So honestly, we have had students in their 40s come through and ask about their eligibility and be determined eligible. So again, as long as a youth was in foster care or a KinGAP agreement at or after the age of 13, um, whether that was last year or 20 years ago, they should be eligible to receive funding, and it follows them through their entire bachelor's degree.
Perfect. Okay. Can students apply if their immigration status is in question?
Oh, yeah, they can. There is some detail about that in the FAQ document. So I don't want to misspeak or I'm going to try not to get too into the weeds with that, but undocumented students are I believe eligible. Again, it's all hinges on foster care experience, or
Okay.
KinGAP agreement experience.
Okay. Can a child who was adopted at 18 tap into this program?
Okay, so the magic window of time is 13 to 18. So if a student was not adopted by age 18, they can be eligible for funding. If they were adopted at age 18, then no, I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. And can the grant be used at a private college outside of New York State?
Oh, good question. No, it's only, and actually this is written into the education law. It's tied to the HEOP law in New York State. So that means any college in New York that hosts a higher education opportunity program, that's what HEOP stands for. They are the colleges that can also disperse foster youth college success initiative funding. So it is one of the main limitations is that for private colleges, you are limited to that list of about, I think it's 45 colleges that host a HEOP right now. But again, all of the SUNY colleges and all of the CUNY colleges do participate as well.
Okay. Is a child that was under 13 years when they either entered foster care or KinGAP eligible or no?
If they spent even one night in foster care at or after the age of 13, they could still be eligible.
Okay.
So if that's always what we say. I always have to defer to my colleagues in at OCFS, but
Sure.
yes, as long as students spent even one night in foster care at or after the age of 13, they should be eligible.
Okay, so the magic age is 13, but it doesn't need to be
Correct.
for an extended period of time as long as there was
Correct.
one night in
One
care.
night.
Oh,
Yep, you bet.
all right. And if a child is orphaned, when you're saying orphaned, is that
Mhm.
through adoption or through foster care? An adoption through foster care, apologies.
Got it. So the orphancy question is a little bit different. That question is actually that those determinations are actually made by the financial aid campus, or excuse me, by the financial aid team on the campus that the college or that the student is attending. There's actually like a federal definition of orphan status, and that's typically what each campus follows. But my office and OCFS actually defer to each campus as to how they determine orphan status and what kind of documentation they would require to make that determination. But
Sure.
generally, it's if the student has lost both parents, or if a student has lost their single parent and has never had contact with the other. It- there is, there's a little bit of gray area there in that orphan status because of circumstances. So that's a question that the student would work directly with their campus about.
Okay, that makes sense. So the short answer there is that's an ad hoc basis. We gotta
You got
address
it.
that
You
one-on-one.
got
Okay,
it.
makes sense. These are great questions that are coming in. I don't see any more at this point in time.
Okay.
I am going to remind folks that we will be sending this out with contact information. So if there are questions going forward, I know Sarah's program highly encourages them. We want to make sure that this is grant funding that is used.
Absolutely.
We were relating just yesterday how us working in the kinship arena, when we get requests for financial assistance, we always want to make sure that caregivers are aware of them as soon as possible. So we don't ever want to be in a situation where we're saying, we are so glad, yes, you are eligible for this. Unfortunately, you're a junior in college, and we wish we could have gotten this for you when you were a freshman. So, it's
Absolutely.
the same thing as the
Absolutely.
grant. We can't make it retroactive. So knowing this information now is really useful.
Absolutely. Every chance that I get to do any kind of outreach like this event, or to talk with high school guidance counselors, or to talk with college admissions counselors, I jump at those opportunities because we really want to make sure, even though it's our 10th year, there are still
Mhm.
pockets of folks out there who have never heard of this or who have no idea that it exists, and it really can make a difference. Especially because it's typically direct aid to students. So that helps them not only be able to pay for tuition and fees every semester, but also it helps them minimize or eliminate student loans. That's we don't want students having to come out with a bunch of student debt. So if we can minimize their loans, we do that as well.
Okay, that's wonderful. Somebody suggested, do you attend college fairs?
We do, yes, thank you. We do in a kind of a limited way. I don't have a ton of bandwidth to be able to do that, but I do other webinars throughout the year as well with other advocacy organizations like this one. So we're trying to get the word out as much as we can.
Great. Well, we'll definitely do our part, in the
Thank
same
you. Spread the word.
from your end to ours. Sometimes we're called the best kept secret of kinship, and we really
Hmm.
don't want to be. We do have one more question come in. What can the grants be used for other than tuition?
Oh, great question. It's quite flexible. So tuition and fees, obviously, books, materials, supplies, transportation, room and board. Um, And even actually one category that was added more recently was unreimbursed medical expenses. So, if a student doesn't have health insurance, or their health insurance hasn't covered, and they had an injury and have some copays that they need to pay, it's all the kinds of things that traditionally, in the old-fashioned model, we would think that we would, call up mom and dad and ask for help with. We want to make sure that these students have every opportunity to meet their expenses so that that's not the factor that might push them out of college. So it is really quite flexible.
Great. Do the individuals need to keep track and submit how they spend the grant money?
Oh, good question. Not necessarily. Now, different colleges might have different stipulations. So I can't give a blanket yes or no. My office doesn't require that. But the different campuses that are actually distributing the funds and applying the funds to students' accounts may have different preferences or practices.
That makes sense. And then this is just wondering if you're aware of any additional educational funding that is available to adoptive parents that have adopted kids before the age of 13.
Great
Um,
question.
it's
Really, I wish I had those answers because believe me, folks write to me all the time, and I'm always asking about that magic age of 13. There are other opportunities out there that I can certainly send you a couple of things that I have heard about, kind of in the periphery, Ray, but they're not things that I really have expertise in. But I mean, I am happy to share them. I can email those to you so that you can then share those along as well. Maybe they would work for the folks that you work with.
okay. It seems as if some caregivers have been told that caseworkers encourage adoption because kids get free college tuition, but that this doesn't pan out. I think it's a little bit different from county to county what folks hear. So that's where
Yes,
that comes from.
absolutely. You know that I'm glad that you mentioned that because I do occasionally have a parent, an adoptive parent, write to me and say, you know, I was told that my kid would be able to go to college for free, and I always have to like kindly respond, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that. I don't know if that's a thing, but let me tell you about what my program can help you with.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of information out there. And especially from a statewide perspective, sometimes it seems as if New York State is many different states, with the way that
Indeed.
counties operate. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And any other questions, feel free to bring them Sarah's way.
Hmm.
You are just a
Just
wealth of
email me.
information. Yes. Um, Very much appreciated today.
I'm
Um,
very happy to get the word out.
yeah, and thanks all for joining us. I'm going to give you back 4 minutes of your day. We will send that information out within the week, and then we will see you guys back in June. Thank you. All right. Thanks a lot, Sarah. Have a good one.
You bet.
Bye.